Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Follow Brand Podcast. I am your host, Grant McGaw, and I am filming live at Atlantis University in Miami, Florida. People say, you're in Atlantis University in Miami, Florida. You just moved to Omaha, Nebraska. Well, I did. And weren't you just in St. Croix? Yes, I was in the USVI, but I also have maintained offices still in the Miami area. And I wanted to have a candid conversation about a topic that a lot of people are finding themselves in. That is transitioning from corporate America to education, or maybe education to business, or any of those types of things. This is important when you're in a transitional, pivoting moment in your life. How can you successfully make that move? So I'm going to introduce you to Professor Thompson, who has made that move from corporate America, which we both worked in for about 20 plus years, into education. And we're going to have a candid conversation around those lines. So, Professor Thompson, would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, you did all the introduction already, but and you know me as Richard Thompson, but for this conversation, we'll keep it at Professor Thompson. That's okay with me. You know, I'm so happy we're able to do this because we worked together 30 years. We've probably known each other 35 years, but we worked together for so long in the business world. But the most important thing is we saw each other's journey, right? We're witnesses to each other's journey. And so we get an opportunity to talk about it. I've watched your change. So it's not just my transition. You were in the world right next to me, technology, and this whole new thing that you're doing now is brand new. Now, just want to make sure no one is asking why you're in Miami. Only thing people want to know is why you're in, never mind, Omaha. But no, it's a pleasure to be here. I like the fact that we're having this conversation. I believe it's an important conversation. I've talked to so many people, whether or not they were forced to or they chose to transition from what they were doing before to something now. And sometimes a lot of them say, man, I wish I had done it sooner. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy to be here.
No, I'm happy you are here. So let's jump right into it, because I always look at the pivot. What was the pivotal moment? Sometimes you have to have that defining experience. You're going along, especially if you're going along for 5, 10, 15, 20 years in a particular profession. And then you come to a point in the road, a fork in the road, more or less. You've got to make a decision. Mm-hmm. Help us understand your particular pivotal moment as you made that transition from corporate America to education. Can you frame that story for us?
You know, I'm sure everybody's story is different. I'll share mine. I'll give a little backstory just so that you understand. I always say that I was lucky enough. I was born in Jamaica, and I grew up in the Bahamas, and after college, I moved to Miami. So I've only lived places where people come to vacation, right? So I've lived my whole life seeing happy people enjoying themselves, having a good time. And I come from the world of hospitality, where it's your job to make people feel well. Why do you do that? So they come back, because people have choices, right? So I came to the United States and I worked in corporate America, and I loved it. I was successful at it. But at some point in the process, I realized that it didn't feel the same anymore. And the reason it didn't feel the same anymore, I went in front of customers, right? My customers, because I had many of them. And when I left, I didn't feel the same. Mm-hmm. The reason I didn't feel the same wasn't about the customers. Yes, the customers did change a little bit, but I didn't feel the same because I didn't feel I was able to deliver top flight customer service. I didn't feel necessarily that my product was the best, that we gave the best service. See, what happens when I first started in business, that's what my company strived to do, right? When we were AT&T, when I used to walk into a customer at AT&T, and they used to say, you don't have to, first part of a presentation, you say, who am I? You've done that before.
Yeah,
every business person has done that. They walk into a room and they say, this is who I am, we're AT&T. And people look at me like, my mother and I own your stock. We know what you do, right? So at that point, for many, many years, all I had to do is deliver on expectations. The expectations were you're going to give superior product, service, right, and manufacturing, and we did that. But as you know, you were going through the process with me with many companies, as with many companies, the transition happens where they may no longer manufacture, where they no longer distribute, where they no longer, and they become so sales driven and so competitive that you feel like the customer isn't being delighted anymore. So that was a long answer to a very easy question, is why I made the pivot, because one day I realized that I wasn't satisfying customers anymore the way I'd like to, or this medium, what I'm doing now, didn't satisfy customers the way I wanted them to. So it's very simple for me. I said, well, who am I, right? Who am I, and how can I pivot? How can I do something different that makes me feel that I'm delivering, right, happiness to the people I do business with? And that's how it started. I sat down one day, and a good friend of ours helped me with the transition. I'll go into that later.
Sure. Now you talked about something that's pivotal in what I do, and helping people help them to understand their brand identity is a part of that. And you've got to do some soul searching about who you are and what you feel your purpose is in this life. And if you're living in that purpose, it's not work any longer. It is a passion of yours, and you enjoy doing it. And what I heard you just say is that you did this for a long time. And I remember we've had these conversations, how you love working for AT&T at the time. You had the best product, you had the best service. People didn't know, but you could deliver on that premium brand experience. Right. But over time, as we all know, in our time, this thing called voice over IP started coming out. Other competitors started coming out. Avaya at the time had to pivot in what they were doing, and all of a sudden, even though we were saying we were the best, we really weren't. You know,
it was very competitive. It was very competitive, and you want to be able to. Your integrity means everything, right? Because that's what we are. We're customer representatives, right, or business representatives. So when we don't deliver or we make promises we don't keep, that customer doesn't want to do business with you anymore, and he tells another and another and another, right? We'll talk a little bit more about this, but networking and keeping your network good is so important. And so at some point you got to say, am I willing, right?
Yeah.
You know, some people say, oh, but the money's good, or, you know, a big company. No, it's not about that. At the end of the day, you have to go to bed and you have to wake up, and you want to feel that you delighted somebody. You never have to pick up the phone and say, I'm sorry, or I missed the mark, or I have to get back to you. I didn't like to do that. One of my biggest things that I hold my hat on is, for 25 years, I worked in the field working with customers and clients. And not one time in 25 years did one customer have to pick up the phone and call above my head. In other words, I'm going to call your vice president, I'm going to call your director, I'm going to call your VP to say you're not delivering what I need. That's never happened. I've never been called into a room because I wasn't meeting customer needs. So when I got to the point where I felt that, you know what, I could no longer say that, you know what, I'm the best, or you're the best, our product's the best, and we're going to deliver on what we promise, it was time for me to look for other things. And at that point, some interesting things happened, and it got me to where I'm at today. And I'll go into that in a moment.
Well, I'm glad that you made that change and that you were able to do that. And it's a transitional period. I would also say that your ideal client changed, meaning you were selling to a certain group of people, then that group of persons changed, and they had a different framework, a different look on different things. And then when I say this, when you were in the the Avaya world and you were usually selling to what we call the telecommunications department. That changed to now what we used to call MIS, but is the information technology world. They were used to plugging things in on IP, not utilizing an analog circuit. It changed things. And I want my customers, I don't want to get too technical about that, but when your ideal client changes, your buyer changes, and the perception changes, you got to start all over again, because you are not, you don't bring that legacy and that pedigree always to the table. Right. Now, you have been in tech, you have been in sales for a very long time. Now, you pivoted over into the educational world.
Right.
How are you bringing that kind of mindset or that kind of skill set to the education world for students?
Okay. Well, I want to fill a gap before I go there and answer that question. I want to fill a gap because we were just talking to me in the business world. Now I'm in education. How did I get here?
Yeah.
Right. So we got to fill that gap. How I got here.
Let's do it.
So we have a mutual friend. I was having a conversation with my mutual friend about, where the state of the business is today. Mark Herman.
Yeah, Mark.
Right, Mark?
Yeah.
Great guy. Good friend of mine. He said, hey, you know what? I went to this, for the lack of a better word, retreat or seminar. It was like a couple-day seminar. And he actually gave me a free pass for it to go. And it literally changed my life because it allowed me to take a look at who I am, not what I do. Mm-hmm. See, when you're in jobs, I am, even, interesting conversation. It irritates me now, but it didn't irritate me before. When somebody walks up to you and say, well, so what do you do? Well, the minute you ask somebody that, now that defines them. It's not about what people do, it's about who people are.
Yeah.
So I went to the seminar and they decide what I do, I'm doing it because of who I am. So I'm not. So this is the first way of disconnecting from AT and technology and IT, realizing I'm just a person who does what I do best, but I'm actually doing it in technology. And a person like me doing what I do best can work in any field. Mm-hmm. So I had to find myself. So the way the seminar and the retreat worked was it talked about abundance, that there's an abundance of opportunities out there, okay, if we're willing to look for them, with finding out who we are. So they do a little, this little test through one of the people that worked there, worked in the thing, do a little test where you pit the things you like to do against each other. And it's a whole process, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you find out what are the top 3 things you were good at, right? And then when you find out, just the same thing we've talked about before, what is our purpose? What are we good at? What our interests are? Whatever that is. That's towards getting you to find out who your purpose is. So I found out that really, for lack of a better term, it wasn't the money, it wasn't South Florida, it wasn't any of that. What it is I like to help people grow. That's literally how it came down. It's a process of elimination, a whole complicated thing. I like to help people grow. And that's why I love business so more, because I went into business, I really wanted, when I went into a brand new company and had to talk to them about their technology or their roadmap to getting best customer service or getting clients, right? I was into it because I wanted them to get better customers and better things. So I wanted them to grow, help people grow. And while I was in that transition to that, for about a couple of years, I started doing business development for small businesses, right? And when I was doing the business development and helping them, I was sitting there and I realized because of and again, thank you, AT&T and Lucent and Avaya, they gave me some amazing tools in terms of, we were always going to training. We didn't realize how much of a high-level training we were getting in terms of, because we were dealing with high-level customers. Yeah. High level. If I mention some of the names that we interface with, they're some of the largest accounts in South Florida.
Across America.
In South Florida. Those are the conversations we're having. But mid-sized companies and smaller companies, they don't get that. So while I'm having this conversation, these people were amazed at some of the information I was getting. So all of a sudden, I'm teaching them. I'm not doing it for them. I'm teaching them how to do best customer service, the importance of data mining or internet or research, doing marketing research. And they're like, whoa, we didn't think about it. It's like, wait a minute, you're in business and you don't think about it. So I said, man, I enjoy teaching what I've learned over this period of time, right? Yeah. And like clockwork, I got a call from another friend of ours, which is here at Atlantis University, was Dr. Stewart. Yeah. Dr. Bert Stewart. So she called, and she actually just asked me if I knew someone that would be interested in teaching. And I said, yeah, I gave her the name of someone in IT. And then she came back again and said, what about business? And Sherry was sitting there while I was, because I turned to her, do you know somebody that, she said, why don't you do it? You got a master's degree. I totally forgot I had a master's degree because and I said, you know what? I've transitioned out of, technology, and you know what? I love this. So I would love to do it. And this day one, I was energized because, again, I'm helping people grow. That's what I found is my core.
Yeah.
Helping businesses and people to grow. That is where I get my motivation from. So I'm doing it at the college level, right? I'm loving it. And I said, and then the kids are coming in, the young adults are coming in. I'm saying, man, I really wish we can reach them sooner. And lo and behold, I get a call from Broward County Public Schools, and they said, hey, you know what? We have an entrepreneurial, small business entrepreneurial program that we're trying to have students get certified in so that they leave college with this education background. I was like, this is a blessing.
Yeah.
So that is how I made the transition. The transition came from that young man in the Caribbean who saw the value of seeing happy customers to getting involved in business where my goal was to grow and have happy customers to now education again, and we'll talk about this.
Yeah.
I see students as customers.
Yeah.
Not everyone in education does.
This is interesting that you frame it in that context. As I was saying earlier, you have to know your client, you have to know your customer, you got to know your buyer. Who is that? You, from what I just gathered from what you just told me, that in order to make to live into your core service that you want to provide, you had to find a customer or a buyer or a persona or someone that could really enjoy what you do. And you found that through students, especially students that were interested in business. And here you said, wow, I'm bringing all that to bear. You bring up an interesting point where I think a lot of people, when they're transitioning, they feel like they have to start all over again. When you're really not starting all over again. You're really taking everything that you've been doing over the last 5, 10, 20, 30 years and repackaging it in a certain manner that someone else can benefit from that, right? You still understand business, you understand technology, you understand the sales process, you understand how that happens. You're able to give that to students as they begin their journey of how they're going to engage and do the right thing around whether it's business or working for a corporation and that type of thing. I applaud you for that, for continuing to do that.
So the students have no idea. Matter of fact, I'll tell you, most students do not want to be in business. They do not want to be an entrepreneur. So but what they do want is they want to do what they love or what they're good at.
Right.
So it's the first thing I have to do is not approach them by hitting them over the head and says, this class is about you starting a business. That would scare the heck out of them.
Yeah.
No. The class is about, hey, what are you passionate about? As a matter of fact, tell me 3 things you're passionate about. Okay? Now tell me 3 things and I always define passion as things you would do even when you're not getting paid for it. Okay, even if you're not going to get paid for it, if you like dogs, you're always going to have a dog, right?
Yeah.
Like rich or poor. Then I say, okay, and then I say, tell me the things you're good at, and I tell the kids, what you're good at is what people tell you you're good at. You know, people always tell you, hey, Grant, Mr. McGaw, you're good at fishing, or you're good at being cooking. Especially when you're cooking the fried fish, right? I'm saying, but what you're good at, right? So tell me 3 things and the last thing is, what are your interests on? And I define that by telling them that what you're interested in is things you have never done before, but you have interest in. You know
Right.
what? I'd like to travel. I like to ride a camel. I like to, fly jets. I don't know what it is, right? Then you ask them, well, now I've brought them in. They're talking about the things they love. They're engaged. I said, wouldn't it be great to be able to do that for the rest of your life and help somebody while doing that and make money while doing the things you love, interest, and passionate about? And all of them say, yeah. And then I say to them, I said, okay, do me a favor. In each of the things you're either interested in or good at, right, or passionate about, tell me careers associated with it. What are the careers associated with you? So now you have people, okay, let's say you said fishing, right? So how many people in the fishing industry? Well, there are people who sell boats. There are people who sell, their marine life. There's, you probably could tell me better, but there's like maybe 9 or 10 things that are associated with just fishing as being passion, interest, or something you're good at, whatever, right? Then you do the next one and the next one, right? I just asked for 10.
Yeah.
So 10, 20, 30, just in the things you're good at. 10, 20, 30 in the things you're passionate about. 10, 20, 30 in the things you're interested about, right? That's 90, right? 90. I said, and I have them draw it on a board, and I said, that is your industry that you can work in, right? Now, what are all the things you can do in that industry, right? All those things you can do in that industry, you can just work in the industry, you can sell to the industry, you can provide products to the industry, then we go down that rabbit hole. Now they're seeing the world. See, the difference between adults and the corporate world, we worked in a world where it wasn't if these people were going on vacations, where they're going on vacation. The level that we're at the C-suite.
Yeah.
We're talking to people at CIOs, CTOs, CFOs. These people have seen the world, right? The difference is students haven't seen anything. And specifically in the kind of school that I went to, which is like more of a Title I school, right? Inner city school, they haven't seen much. So the first thing you have to do in education is have them open their minds and do research. So for weeks, I just have them totally go down that rabbit hole of what they love and do it before I start to introduce the business concept. But what I do tell them is that once you have found a career in somewhere that you love, purpose, interest, or good at, and then you're able to help them. Because remember, my focus is to help people.
Right.
And they're all now, yes, I want to help you. Yes, I want to help people. I said, then you found your purpose. I will tell you, nobody walks away from their purpose. See, the thing is about what I've found a lot since I've been in this world is that people are good to tell you what you need to do, right? You need to find your purpose. But you got to give people a roadmap on how to do it, right? And I just showed you the blueprint.
Yeah.
Just write down what you're good, interested, and passionate about. Talk about careers in it, And you could keep doing it, right? Because you could put down law enforcement, and how many places can you go with law enforcement? You work in healthcare.
Yeah.
My God, if you just said, I want to be a nurse, and I said, that's great, be a nurse. But do me a favor, how many other jobs is there in healthcare? You can reach thousands. And when you have that on the board, it looks overwhelming and amazing. But these are students that I never want to be able for them, when somebody asks them, because this happens a lot. It happened to me at the college level. Hey, so what do you want to do? I don't know. How can you not know? But if you've gone down the road, you say, why do you want to go into medical? Well, they have all these careers, they have all these trends, they have all these things going on. And what kind of things are you going to do in there? Well, I can do this and I can do it, because they've researched it, right?
Well, if I could jump in, what I've heard you say, just put it into context, is that you first, especially when you first engage with students, is you help them find clarity, focus, and then their own purpose is not given to them. They define what it is that they really want to go into, because you're going to invest time and money into your education to eventually be able to provide for yourself, for whether you're going to a career or if you're going to business for yourself. You've got to have those basics. What I really like what you just stated is that I'm not going to just tell you what, you might come up with some ideas, or you may have an idea of what you want to do, right? But you've given them a process that they can begin to utilize over and over again to find other things. Because I guarantee you will pivot along the way. I've interviewed over 200 different executives, right? Most of them all tell, especially when they're in their collegiate years, that they started out doing something completely different.
Yeah.
And then how they got into this particular field or this profession, sometimes it was by happenstance. Sometimes it was in a certain way, like they just did not know. I talked to so many different CEOs of hospitals. I wanted to be a doctor. But then I got into the actual room and I saw blood, And it was like, that was going to be a doctor.
Yeah, that's not good. Blood and that's not going to work.
So until you get into the profession and really see what it truly is about, you only have an idea. It's almost like I have an idea to go swimming, but once you get into the water, you might find out, hey, this is a little bit different from where but you're giving them the process, because you can then recalibrate. You know what? Recalibrate that. Yeah. But go through your experimental stages while you have the opportunity, because as we both know, as you go further and further down the road of life, your opportunities for change lessen, because you have responsibilities that you did not have typically, when you're in the collegiate world. I want you to help us understand, as you pivoted and then you had to make that transition within yourself, the struggles and challenges that you came across, like, wow, this is different, but then you had to get your rhythm with it. You had to find your balance with it. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so the first thing, and again, all of this is transitioning from one area that I did well into another area. But some of the things, even though I did well over here, didn't translate over here. Okay, so the first thing that you have to change is how you communicate. Like I mentioned to you before, CEOs, well-traveled, well-learned. Now you're dealing with people that don't care. They don't care. It's high school. They don't care. They think they figured it all out, right? Okay. So your communication is totally different. You have to be a lot more repetitive, a lot more structured, right? You got to hold hands a little bit more. The one thing you never dealt with, for the most part, we never really dealt with it. Because it was business, right? We always said business and personal is different. In education, they're the same. It's their personal life affects who they are. Students will walk in and they have the weight of the world on them. They all come from different situations. So in the transition, in the tipping point, I could take my strengths, right, to the classroom, which was organization skills, listening skills, because I used to listen to customers, their needs. So now I'm listening to students and their needs. I'm still, I'm learning from how to problem solve. So I'm teaching the students how to problem solve. I'm used to meetings, right? Students are not used to meetings. They're used to being on their own in their room and on their device, right? They're not used to collaborating, right? So the importance, I've seen the joy of what collaboration has done to students that have been isolated. They love it. They don't want to do it, but they will love it. So the differences that I've seen, I've been able to take, but then the skills that have worked for me well is, as a natural salesperson, you learn to listen first. You have to listen to your customer. Business, education, I don't care where it is. When you lose track of who the customer is, and let me tell you, it's not a skill that a lot of people understand, because I'm telling you, in certain fields, and I don't want to necessarily say education, they are very rigorous. These are the rules. You follow the rules, and there's always punishment associated with not completing tasks, right? It's kind of the way education goes, smack, right? In the world where we come from, we can't, if I build a great restaurant, a great Jamaican restaurant, curry goat, curry chicken, oxtail, rice and peas, and I put it in the middle of Cayocho in Little Havana and nobody comes in, what am I going to yell at the customers? I can't yell at customers, right? I'm not motivating them. I haven't put the restaurant in the right place. I should have put it in Lauderhill with the other 30,000 of them that are there, or in another part, or Pembroke Pines. You have to know your customer. And so that has helped me well. And so what we do is we motivate customers to buy from us. That's what we've always done, right? Yeah. How do I become that valued asset to that customer, right? And so that's what I'm trying to establish to students. Know them, and how can I be that trusted advisor? Remember that word we use?
Oh, yeah, still do.
Trusted advisor. So we continue to say, So it doesn't matter, that transition. So what I'm saying is nobody has to be fearful as they transition. You take what you know and what you've learned. Those years of experience mean something.
Yeah.
And you don't understand, if you just are willing to take a leap of faith, your skills that you've learned over 20, 25, 30 years will transition. It will transition, right? You don't just go through the world and learn all this stuff and it doesn't transition. You just have to be patient and say, wait, it will transition, but how do I deliver it in this space? Because you deliver it
Well, you
differently.
brought up something earlier that I think I would encourage our audience to truly do. First, you sometimes you have to have a pivotal moment or a linchpin to get you to that next level, or at least get your mind to start thinking differently. For you, that was that seminar. You took the advice, you went to that webinar, you started to think differently. You started to look at the possibilities of doing something different. We all need assistance and we all need help. We can't always do it by ourselves. So you seek out certain individuals that have expertise in certain areas that you do not, because they're further down the road, that can help you in that transition. Me and you talked to your best friend, now my mutual friend. Hey, how can my skill sets transition to another point in time in my life if I start doing it early? That's another thing. You don't want to get into the situation where you have to do something now. Sometimes you go through a layoff. You got to do something now. Something happens. In my particular case, I started to look for what I have now for 5-star BDM 5 years before because I went through a layoff in 2019, 22, right before the pandemic. And I did get another job and that type of thing, but I started to realize if I don't begin to develop a way of supporting and sustaining myself through my own business skills, it's going to get harder and harder for me down the line. So I began developing this type of skill set that someone else found valuable, knowing your customer, knowing who you're helping. And it all goes back to this. I want to end it like this. You've got to know your story, and you got to know who would benefit from the story that you have lived.
Yep.
If you can do that, you can start making transitions, and knowing these transitions don't have to be within a day, a week, a month. It can be over time.
Yeah.
That you do that. So before we conclude, because we're getting toward the end of our time on the podcast, I want you to frame that story. We've talked about your transition. We've talked about your true client right now, which is the students that you serve. If you had to look back in time when you were a student, when you were going to the University of Florida, and the teaching that you got and the understanding you got, and then what the understanding that you're giving now to your students, how is that different, and how do you think it's going to be beneficial for them going forward?
If I had to, the only thing I would change as I was younger is I would have definitely said to myself, I should have been a lifelong learner. And lifelong learning means, it just means that you're paying attention, right? There's a term that we use in football that's called head on a swivel. What that means is, for those people that aren't football, is that you got to pay attention to the world around you, right? And when you pay attention to the world around you, you have to do that in football because somebody will take your head off if you don't, if you're not paying attention.
Right.
I would have paid more attention to the world around me, right? I would say pay more attention. That's what I'm trying to teach the students to do. In other words, they got something I never had. They've got a computer in their hands, okay? And I ask my students to not take the time just to use it for entertainment. If you can just give me 50% of the time, even 40, at this point, 30% of the time, to use it for education, right? Every time you see, oh, that's cool, what would it take to do that? Oh, let me find out about that. We were limited in our curiosity because we had to either watch the news or go to a library or read a book or go to a university.
Right.
Right? They don't have that anymore. They can, I do it all the time. We didn't even get into AI, right?
Yeah.
AI is your information. I don't even like Googling things anymore because Google gives me a lot of ads. I have an AI partner. AI doesn't give me any ads. It just gives me the answer.
Right.
So yes, as a younger person, and with anyone now that's transitioning, and the reason we're talking about this, let me be very clear. The younger generation now will change jobs as much as 10 to 15 times, while our generation may have changed it 3 to 4 or 5 times.
Correct.
Okay. So this is a new world. So embracing change is something we all have to get used to. The problem is that we have a lot of people that have aged out of the business world, aged out, whether they're firefighters, police officers have aged out, and they're still 50 years old and they got 30 years to live. What are you going to do now? So I'm telling those people is find out your interests, what you're good at, and what your passions are, and then explore, right?
Explore, yeah.
Educate yourself on those industries, and you will find, no matter what career you had before, there is something in your background that you've learned, that you've trained over all those 40, 50 years you weren't done for waste. Somebody wants those skills. I am a testament to say, you don't take it for granted. People understand that. I have a good friend. He's just transitioned to, he was in law enforcement, and he transitioned to have his own training on trafficking, right? And let me tell you, he's passionate about it, but I thought I knew. I didn't know this stuff. I listened to him. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. Don't be afraid of change. Don't be afraid of speaking, network, because that's the other thing I teach the kids. In order to get from purpose to opportunity, you have to network.
Yeah.
So you found your purpose in life. You let everybody know. So right now to transition, if everybody doesn't know, don't transition until everybody knows what you're looking for, right? You're the king of LinkedIn. Let people know, everybody conversation. This is what I want to do next, right? That's networking. Letting the people know what you want to do next. Boy, people remember that. That makes you memorable.
Right.
Once you're memorable, opportunities come your way. Hey, you don't have to be present. So so I would tell the person I knew before, the number one thing, and I tell it to young and old, is have your head on a swivel. Keep your eyes on what's going on out in the world. See which ones hit your purposes. Explore them. You don't just quit a job and go work there. Then you go, whoa, I didn't know this. That happened. That used to happen before. People used to quit a job and go work something. And then 2 weeks into it, I didn't know it was going to be like this. Why didn't you know it was going to be like this?
No research.
No. You seek it out. You seek it out. Network opportunity. And so when you land, you're in the place where you want to be. And nothing feels better than the place you want to be. Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that start off by saying, this is what I want, right?
Yeah.
I want this big house, right? And then they say, well, what am I going to do to get what I want? So they do want, do, and then they're being. And then and guess what? They're unhappy.
Yeah.
Because they started off with, what do I want? What I want. So I'm going to do this to get this. And then you're here.
Yeah.
I'm telling you to reverse it. Decide who you want to be.
Yes.
Okay? And then you do, right?
Yeah.
What you need to be this person. And then you'll want for nothing.
Yeah, you want for nothing. Those are just natural results that go away. This has been wonderful, Professor Thompson.
You can call me Richard now. No.
I'll call you Richard now.
No.
And I do this with all my guests before I let you go. And I always ask in the moment, how did you feel about this interview?
No, it felt good. It felt good. I love what you're doing because we are all a brand, right? We're all unique. Branding yourself is part of what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Branding yourself is you, believe it or not, is you letting the world know what you are good at, passionate about, interested. The same thing I've talked about. So it makes people think. You walk around as your brand every day.
Yes.
People don't realize that the way you wear your hair, the way you walk your clothes, the cars you buy, you are a personal brand. The best thing to understand right now is that people are making millions and millions of dollars being influencers.
Yes. What is that?
That's all they're doing. They branded themselves. Yeah. People go looking for foolishness.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So you don't have to be, there's someone that needs what you have. There's someone who wants what you have, and they're willing to follow, pay for it. There's so many channels for you to get your brand out, and that's why I love what you're doing. So I appreciate you having me on.
No,
and you did the right thing. You had my wife on before me.
I did. I've had two other people on before we had this moment, because I've known Richard Thompson for a very, very long time. Yeah. Professor Everton Thompson. Yeah. I had to get his name correct. You have to know the backstory to understand why this had to come out. So I make sure that I did that. But I want the audience, first of all, kudos to Atlantis University. It's the second time they've had me in the studio. And this is a wonderful, wonderful university. I came here the first time. I saw the joy in your face, and I saw it as you came across, and so many people were warm to you. This is like home for you. And I knew you were in your zone of genius. So, wow, this is exactly where you need to be.
Did you use the word genius?
Genius.
I don't think that word's ever been associated to me in my life.
Professor Thompson. Zone of genius. But I want to thank them for having us here. But you've got to, first of all, let them know how to contact you, and then how to contact university. And if you don't mind, tell them about some of the coursework they can get here at Atlantis University.
Well, Atlantis University is an amazing opportunity that I had here. They have some core programs here. I teach in the School of Business, and I teach marketing and management and those sort of things. It's so important that we give students the full view of what the world they're going to experience, right? So that's why I love being here, because one of the things I didn't talk about before is that I'm a real world person talking to them, right? I'm not necessarily just a academic who I'm talking from a textbook. I believe, and what we try to do here at Atlantis is have professors that have real world responsibility. So that when we're talking to students, we're talking about LinkedIn, we're talking about Instagram and the importance of that. We're staying current. Mm-hmm. You know, I've been to some courses in other schools, because I've taught at other universities, where the minute I saw a book and it said 2018, I said, I'm not teaching from this book, because that was before COVID. The world changed after COVID, right? Everything. Supply chain changed.
True.
Online, everything changed. So Atlantis is good. It's here in Miami, Florida, and it has a good undergraduate program. It has a very good graduate program. All the professors here are similar to me. We spend a lot of time talking about our previous lives as opposed to talking about our current lives. So, and I want to thank them for giving us this opportunity, definitely, to be here. The whole idea of doing it in this setting had everything to do with the fact that students need to understand today that there are going to be changes in their life, constant changes, and they either need to be in the forefront of it, or they're going to forced upon them. Change. There are three things that always keep moving, right? Mm-hmm. All right, so the one thing is definitely social norms. So today you wear a tie, we always had to wear a tie. Today, I'm not wearing a tie, and then Zuckerberg doesn't even wear a shirt, right? No, I'm kidding, right? So social norms are going to definitely change. We lived in the other thing that always changes, technology. Don't sit down and say, oh, I am not going to use I'm not going to use the internet. I'm not going to use LinkedIn to get a job. No. I'm not going to use AI. I even heard educators say, I'm not going to use AI. I said, are you kidding me?
Right.
AI is the most amazing thing to allow professors to give the best information and get it back from the students. Teachers have to learn how to ask better questions, right? Don't just ask students to define it. That's what Google's for. Just like, remember when we had calculators first came out and they asked you to do math long-handed and you said, why? I have a calculator.
Right.
I remember telling that to a teacher. I'm like,
no one cares about using a calculator.
Nobody knows. Nobody could do long division anymore. No. Why? Why? Right? Yeah. Right? And so definitely technology continues to change. Social norm continues to change. always moving, right?
Yep.
Social norms, always moving. Technology, what's the other thing that's always moving?
People.
Time.
Oh.
That's the
Don't slip
biggest,
on time.
that's the biggest thing I've heard. I wish I would have done this sooner. Okay? So understand, adapt technology, understand that social norms changing is opportunities.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Changing.
And absolutely, absolutely do not waste a moment of your time.
No, I couldn't have said it better. Again, first of all, they got to know how to email you and give us the not email address, but the URL for Atlantis University.
I don't have it. Everybody Google stuff. Go to AI. No, but reaching me is Everton, Everton.Thompson at atlantisuniversity.edu, right?
Okay.
And I believe it's just atlantis.com. So atlantisuniversity.com. They'll find it.
We'll find Atlantis University. Look at this. Ask ChatGPT. He'll definitely get you there. I want to definitely encourage your entire audience, everybody at Atlantis University, they can come and see all the episodes that follow the brand at 5-star BDM. That is the number 5. That is star. That is B for brand, D for development, M for masters.com. I want to thank you again for being on the show, Professor Everton.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you.